made him stop. Ed Hoffman had never been to Dealey Plaza prior to that day. He did not know that there was a steam pipe that was separating the railroad tracks from the west end of the parking lot. From his elevated position on Stemmons Freeway, Ed watched as the president's motorcade traveled up the entrance ramp onto Stemmons. Ed saw a massive hole in the back right portion of President Kennedy's head. Ed Hoffman was the first civilian to see that. The doctors at Parkland 5 minutes later verified that the back of the head was blown out. How did Ed Hoffman know where the president was wounded unless he saw it for himself? After tossing the murder weapon to his accomplice, the man in the suit the man who fired the rifle turned and walked towards the fence, where he was confronted at gunpoint by a uniformed Dallas police officer who had run into the area in response to hearing shots. Ed watched as this uniformed officer point his pistol directly at the man in the suit. Ed saw the man in the suit remove something from his suit coat, and the officer lowered his weapon and allowed the man to walk away. That officer, Joe Marshall Smith, testified to the Warren Commission that the man he encountered produced credentials from his coat that showed him to be a United States Secret Service agent. The significance of that, no Secret Service agent was on the ground in Dealey Plaza. They were on the way to Parkland Hospital. How did Ed Hoffman know about this encounter unless he saw it for himself? After the president's vehicle passed Ed Hoffman's location, Ed tried to get the attention of a uniformed police officer who was stationed on top of the railroad bridge less than 100 yards north of where Ed had parked his car. As Ed ran towards the officer, the Secret Service follow-up car headed up the entrance ramp onto Stemmons Freeway. A man inside that follow-up car pointed a rifle directly at Ed as it sped up the ramp. 6 witnesses, including the 4 agents inside the car, verified that Agent George Hickey was handling an AR-15 assault rifle while the cars were still in Dealey Plaza. How did Ed Hoffman know there was an AR-15 in the car unless he saw it for himself? Everything Ed Hoffman saw between 12 noon and 12:35 has been corroborated by affidavits and sworn testimony. There are still some critics of Ed Hoffman as to whether he saw what he saw from Stemmons Freeway. If he was not where he said he was, how did he know that there was a uniformed police officer stationed on the railroad bridge over the top of Stemmons Freeway? How did he know there were people behind the picket fence acting suspiciously prior to, during, and after the assassination? A uniformed police officer did encounter a man dressed in a suit in the parking lot moments after the shooting. The Secret Service agent was handling an AR-15 assault rifle in the follow-up car. The president had a massive wound in the back of his head. How did Ed Hoffman know any of this? The irony of this entire story is that the one man who could tell what happened can't speak and cannot hear. We are here today to speak for Ed Hoffman. We need to move past the myth that a single man hiding inside that building fired the shots that killed President Kennedy. Many of the people here today that were here that day believed at least one shot came from the area near the picket fence. 53 witnesses, many of whom were law enforcement officers, submitted sworn affidavits or gave statements to the FBI that they heard shots coming from the picket fence area. My research partner, Casey Quinlan, and I have just completed our first book entitled Beyond the Fence Line, the eyewitness account of Ed Hoffman and the murder of President Kennedy. With your permission, we would like to present the first copy of that book to Mr. Hoffman. Thank you very much.
That's it. If you guys want to clap for him, get your hands up like this. Let me summarize this thing up and we'll end it for our part and give it back. The state of Texas holds the keys